Welcome back to our program. It is emerging that some 1.2 million vehicles, if not more, in the country are not insured and carry fake insurance stickers, putting drivers and passengers at greater risk in the event of an auto accident. The National Insurance Commission's 2018 report has revealed that out of the over 2.2 million vehicles registered with the DVLA, only 1 million motor insurance stickers have been sold. My colleague Bismarck Ausa looks at its implication on the economy.
The data, which is captured in the 2018 annual report and financial statement of the National Insurance Commission, highlights the alarming proliferation of fraudulent motor insurance stickers, especially those for commercial vehicles. It therefore inferred that there are a large number of uninsured vehicles or fake motor insurance stickers in circulation. The danger this poses is that it exposes innocent passengers to high risk of not being eligible for any compensation should they be involved in any accidents whilst traveling on such vehicles. The Commission, however, believes that the most effective solution to this is the implementation of an electronic motor insurance database, that is, a central database to check the validity of motor insurance stickers. The Commission is therefore in talks with the DVLA to ensure checks are made about the validity of an insurance cover before vehicles are registered or undergo a roadworthy assessment. The NIC looks forward to implementing this database before the end of the year 2019. Meanwhile, information reaching Joy Business is that though it is not clear the number of vehicles government owns, majority of the uninsured vehicles plying the roads are being used by its agents or employees. Does it mean that the NIC has lost the fight against uninsured government properties, or maybe it's just a matter of time? Bismarck Ausa, Joy Business.
Very disturbing, that report from the National Insurance Commission. We're joined in the studio by President of the Chartered Insurance Institute of Ghana, Reverend Asante Ahinkra. He's going to speak about an upcoming AGM by the Institute. Is an AGM and educational conference. We'll delve into that. Welcome. Thanks for your time tonight. But I want to ask you about that report by the NIC about the fact that 1.2 million vehicles may not be insured. Are you surprised at the stats?
No, I'm not surprised. It's been the case for some time now. I think what they're looking to do is to try to rectify that. Now that we have, digitization, we have a means of checking on the roads whether a vehicle has insurance or not. That would go a long way to increase the number of people who ought to have insurance. We have a lot of people who are involved in accidents and they can't get claims, basically because the car is not insured. And when it occurs and it's not insured, you may not have the resources to pay. And so we have a large number of people who have to come to the National Insurance Commission and get some ex gratia, what we call ex gratia payment, because of a fund that has been set up. So it will go a long way to alleviate the suffering of people and to help boost the economy, because then we're getting more premiums.
All right, so the Insurance Commission is talking about an electronic database.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about digitization. So was that the lapse in the system,
which is
the reason for which we're not able to get those vehicles insured? What are the lapses, you think?
Yeah, basically, it's a matter of enforcement, but they need a means to do that. Because if you have a way of preventing the thing from occurring, it's less expensive than going out on the road to check every vehicle. Should the police have to go one-on-one, that's going to be a lot of work for the police. But this is a means of preventing it from happening, so that the DVLA, for instance, then they can do a check and they can have a database that is linked both to DVLA and then NIC.
I'm just wondering how effective that would be. I mean, to a large extent, in terms of how many of them we can get insured.
I think it's going to get a lot more insured. There are a lot of vehicles that once they get a month or two, without insuring, and they think they can get away with it, they then stay there and say, well, I can get away with this. And so it's just a matter of maybe getting some money. If I'm questioning, I give something out to the policeman and then I go. But there's a situation where without it, probably you can't do your DVLA renewal, for instance. And so it puts the check in there before even people have to enforce.
All right. So we can move on and talk about the 3-day AGM and educational conference coming up. What's on the table for this AGM?
Right. I think we've all realized that we need to sit up as professionals in this country. What is happening in the financial sector requires every professional body to be up their game and do what they ought to do. Traditionally, we have this annual conference, but this year we are trying to draw members' attention to improving professionalism, going back to the basics. A lot of things happen because with time, we forget the basic principles that we ought to abide by as professionals. And so this time around, I want to zero in and get our market to begin to consider going back to doing the right things. Because doing the right things help us avoid the pitfalls that happen, like what is happening in the banking sector. You would ask yourself, were they not run by professionals? What was their input? So those are the things that we think we should
Interesting,
highlight.
this is coming at a time when there's also talk about a review of the minimum capital requirement for the insurance sector. You also mentioned the financial sector cleanup, and we know that, there are also efforts to sanitize the insurance sector. All these are very important developments within the industry that you would be considering. But what really is a talk amongst your members about these plans by the Insurance Commission?
Well, basically, some obviously, if you're a company that doesn't have the capital, you'll be worried because the regulator is a regulator, and if they are to say that you've got to raise this money, that means you have to go find that money, and it's not that easy. So obviously, there will be some apprehensions. What I understand is that the National Insurance Commission also wants to protect the depositor, also want to improve the market, and if in their wisdom they think that that is the way to what will assist them to be able to get there, then we can't begrudge them. But we are also concerned that local businesses are not, because they are not able to raise money, have to be asked to leave the industry. That is a worry for each one of us. But I believe that if enough time is given for them, I think most of them will be able to raise.
Yes, because I was going to ask you if you are optimistic that most of your members are going to meet that figure. But we're running out of time on this one. I want to ask you about the educational part of it, what you intend to accomplish with that.
Right. I think basically a professional body sets standards. And anytime the standards are compromised, we lose out. And so what we intend to do is to try to raise the standards of the professional body. We don't want things getting out of hand. So we want to look at some basic things that underwriters and claims management we should be seeing. And also look at annuity. We have an opportunity where new pensions, some people who were under the new pensions law will be retiring, and therefore they need annuities. And so we want to see the prospects available for the annuities market so that we can prepare ourselves to deliver on that as well. So that is basically what we'll be heading up.
All right, and that is taking place when?
At the Rock City in Kau, in Kwetia.
I see.
We want to also promote local tourism, so we want to make sure that we spread out. And
I guess we'll be there to cover. Thanks very much for your time tonight.
Thank you,
that
Daryl,
was
for having us.
Reverend Asante Mafua-Ahenkwa, President of the Chartered Insurance Institute of Ghana. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Well, a recent investment validation report by CATS International and the World Economic Forum indicates that some investors are looking elsewhere to invest other than Ghana due to legislation on the minimum capital requirement by the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, GIPC. According to the GIPC Act, foreign investors must have a minimum capital requirement between $1 and $5 million to make them eligible to do business in the country. Speaking to Joy Business at a validation workshop, policy and community lead for international trade and investment with the World Economic Forum, Matthew Stevenson, expressed the need for this cap to be reviewed, if not scrapped.
The validation report indicates that the up to $1 million minimum capital requirement scares prospective investors from investing in Ghana. Policy and community lead for international trade and investment with the World Economic Forum, Matthew Stevenson, shared examples of such instances where investors had to look elsewhere to establish their business.
There's one company that would like to provide a certain service to spray crops, where the income that they believe they will get from that annual service would be about $100,000. But right now the minimum capital requirement to invest is $500,000. So they're not going to invest in Ghana for this level of business, given that the 500 is much bigger than the 100. If the 500 number were not there, they would invest tomorrow to provide this new service in the agricultural sector in Ghana.
Meanwhile, Center Coordinator for Cuts International, Apia Akusi Edumako, fears Ghana could lose out massive investments to other West African economies in the continental free trade area if regulations involving the minimum capital requirement are not addressed immediately.
We as a country, we need to look at our laws on minimum capital requirement, because if we don't do that, we are going to lose out to even our competitors who we have around West Africa. Côte d'Ivoire has done away with, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, they have all done away with their minimum capital requirement. And the reason is that if somebody wants to set up an IT firm, a software company, that company doesn't need 1 million Ghana cedis or $300,000 to be able to do that.
The validation report also touched on the need for government to provide comprehensive insurance in the agri sector to attract investors.
Now, the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry has called on the business community to prepare themselves for the Continental Free Trade Agreement next year. Trade Minister Alan Tremontaine cautions Ghana could lose out on trade benefits if businesses fail to step up to the challenge. He was speaking at the Chamber's annual general meeting.
Having the privilege of hosting the CFTA should make Ghana the new commercial capital for Africa.
Trade Minister Alan Tremontaine has thrown a challenge to Ghana's business community and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry to lead trade margins with competitive goods and services as the Continental Free Trade Agreement is implemented. Speaking at the annual general meeting of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Alan Tremontaine warned that failure to take advantage of the CFTA will spell doom for Ghana's SMEs.
We will do our part, but it requires the private sector also to enhance their own competitiveness at the firm level. Because if government does all we can in these 7 cluster areas, and at the firm level you are not competitive, then you are back to square one.
Joy Business engaged the president of the chamber, Dr. Nana P.J. Dankawoso I, who disclosed a crucial meeting with all business chambers in Africa to craft out modules through which they can facilitate effective trade coordination among member states.
Next week we are meeting in Addis, and I'm representing as the immediate past president of the Pan-African Chambers of Commerce. We are meeting as a council, and that all the chambers of commerce, which is the leadership of private sectors of all these 55 countries in Africa, so to see how best we can collaborate.
The annual general meeting also saw other businesses showcase their brands and services.
Meanwhile, African leaders have been urged to unite for a common goal under the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Economist Professor Godfrey Bokpin, who stated this at the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana public lecture in Accra, said the agreement cannot survive under dispersed priorities of African leaders. There is more in this report.
African leaders have been urged to unite for a common goal under the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Economist Professor Godfrey Bokpin, who stated this at the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana public lecture in Accra, said the Continental Free Trade Agreement cannot survive under the dispersed priorities of Africa. Professor Bokpin said the Continental Free Trade Agreement will help Africa to compete feverishly on the international market.
If you look at the number of times we have had to visit the IMF, even broadly in Africa, I mean, Liberia been there 21 times and all of that. These are issues that we have to be able to look at broadly, which will also inform fiscal and monetary policy management. Because the point is that when you go for some of these fund-supported programs, it doesn't depend totally on you in fashioning out your economic policy and all of that. So I think that since we are aspiring for Africa for Africa, Africa rising, Africa for itself, and all of that, I think we have to begin to also win ourselves off from many of these donor institutions that we tend to fall on more often than not, because some of the things that we have to do here must be financed. If we are unable to generate the finance ourselves, then it means that we are going to submit ourselves again to many of these donor institutions, and they dictate ultimately what's the outcome. And that is why I believe that the Ghana Beyond Aid is very, very important. And I believe that it's not only a document that Ghana is proud of. I believe that Africa should embrace that whole concept of Africa Beyond Aid and ensure that we are able to finance our own development agenda from our own tax revenue or from foreign direct investment in a more competitive way.
Professor Bobkin added that Africans should ensure proper monetary policy management to ensure full control of the African market.
African leaders must show leadership, and that is important because leadership is key in addressing corruption. Leadership is key in generating the much needed confidence in that trade area itself. It's very, very important. And then more importantly, if you look at how much Africa loses annually through illicit financial flows, it's far more than how much we get from aid and even the Eurobond that we do. So what it means that there's a lot of revenue we can actually get without burdening the faithful few by closing these leakages. And we can only do so effectively when we collaborate. African countries, African government should collaborate and share information and tracking. As we harmonize trade, customs, and all of that, we have to be able to share that information also and ensure that the excessive trade misinvoicing that is costing us billions of dollars are all closed out. That could be a lot of revenue for us.
African Continental Free Trade Agreement will create a single continental market which will improve intra-African trade. Alberta BCU for Joy Business.
Now, the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, GEPA, is projecting a $2.8 billion revenue to be derived by the state by 2021 from coconut cultivation. Director of Public Relations for GEPA, Ruth Marfo, disclosed that a maiden international coconut festival will be coming up between the 24th and 26th of September in Accra.
Coconut is one of the 5 crops selected for government planting for export and rural development. The Ghana Export Promotion Authority, in collaboration with the African Coconut Group, is hosting the first ever international coconut festival to bring industry players closer to the farmers. Director of Public Relations for the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, Ruth Marfo, highlights further the economic potential of coconut.
Coconut is one of our cash crops that we've realized that is earning us some foreign exchange, and it needs to be promoted because it feels like that crop is not really so well known like the cocoa, cashew, pineapple. So we thought it wise that when the African Coconut Group decided to come up with this first ever International Coconut Festival, we thought this is a good launch pad to promote the crop, especially when we know that it has huge benefits when it comes to health, medicinal, beauty, skincare. It really does a lot, and it's untapped. We've just scratched the surface. So we thought this was a good way to actually know more about the crop and sell it more. Of course, to export more and earn more for Ghana. Sometime earlier this year, when we gave about 60,000 quality coconut seedlings to farmers in the central region, we projected that by 2021 we should be aiming to have about $2.8 billion in revenue. That's if all goes well and we are able to sell coconut as much as we want to.
Kweku Boateng is director of the African Coconut Group. He also shares other benefits of coconut production aside the usual consumption.
When you take the coconut plant itself, nothing about the plant goes waste. So every part of the plant is useful and can be channeled to an alternative use to create jobs. That is when we add value to it. For instance, let's talk about the water. coconut water in 2015 in the United States. So was sold for about, I think, $305 billion US. Okay, coconut water in the US was sold for $312 million. This was an analysis in 2012. Because of the nutritional benefits that we derive from consumption of the water. That is the meat, as they used to call it. This is used in, value is added to this to get the coconut oil.
The theme for the International Coconut Festival will be promoting export diversification through a robust Ghanaian coconut industry.
In other news tonight, the Central Torn District Assembly has handed over acres of lands to prospective investors looking forward to engage unemployed youth in the district for agricultural projects. The DC, Thomas Zonra Moore, tells Joy Business the Assembly is calling for more of such investors to come and invest in agriculture. Fred Duho has more.
Central Torn District in the Volta region is one of many districts in the country that has so far made strides in government's Planting for Food and Jobs program. At Mafi Amideko, a vast piece of land belonging to the state has been given out to investors for cultivation. About 5 companies have started establishing greenhouse installations to begin commercial vegetable production for export. Among these is the West Africa Commodities Company, which is installing 10 greenhouses and 500 open fields over 2,000 acres of land. The DCE, Thomas Moore, tells Joy Business the electricity installation is causing a delay in the project.
We need to connect it to electricity to get the fans working and can do cultivation. We tried, they tested the land already and it's very good, both the open field and the greenhouse one. So when we are able to mount the transformer, which is lying there for some days now, and it's connected to the houses, then production will start and workers will also start laughing.
He believes the assembly will generate much revenue through issuing certificates to these businesses.
The investors to come here, then we give them a portion of the land. This helps create jobs for our people. At least over 200 people are working here now. Direct laborers, and then the indirect one. At least you can count about 50 to 60 machine operators, those who come to sell, my estimation.
Some local youth employed from the community recount the impact the project is making in their lives.
The coming of this company has employed a number of the youth from the community. We get our daily bread from this job from this company.
This project, when completed, will produce green pepper, tomato, among others. Fred Duho's report for Joy Business.
And finally tonight, our summary is Dr. Papa Kwesi Indom reacting to news of his resignation from Gold Coast Brokerage Plus, Huawei chief offers to share 5G know-how for a fee.
Dr. Papa Kwesi Indom has reacted to media reports of him resigning from the board of Gold Coast Brokerage Limited. The chairman of Group Indom in a statement revealed that the organization has a tradition of rotating directors off and on the boards of all its subsidiaries, and his stepping down from the board was just part of that tradition. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has announced that government's risk guarantee program for the banking sector will give credit facilities to farmers and agribusinesses to expand and grow their enterprises. Parliament in March approved a $10 million loan facility made available by the African Development Bank to begin the implementation of a project aimed at lowering credit risk in the agriculture sector. The Ghana Export Promotion Authority, GEPA, has estimated a $2.8 billion coconut revenue for Ghana by 2021 if efforts to improve production, processing, and exportation of the crop are successful. As part of government's effort to promote other cash crops in its Planting for Export and Rural Development, GEPA and the African Coconut Group are organizing the first ever International Coconut Festival to bring to bear some of the hidden benefits of coconut and how Ghana can earn foreign exchange from it. Kenya's
We have more business news coming up on Joy News Prime. In the meantime, more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Thanks for watching. My name is Daryl Kwao. We'll be back same time tomorrow.